Welcome back at WNST, Towson, Baltimore. And Baltimore Positive. I have no Baltimore Positive on the screen right now, but we're positively going to be at the Chaucer in Highlandtown celebrating the beginning of the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. Certainly on Thursday afternoon when the WNST text service came to me right around 3:56 in the afternoon on Thursday. I thought, well, maybe it's the end of the Ravens season. Luke Jones here to join us. Luke, I've always wanted to do radio from my car at the corner of 28th and Remington right now. At least I'm looking at a Royal Farms ad out the window here, right down off of Falls here. What an afternoon. I mean, I still have not gotten my COVID test, by the way, so I don't know. I'm positive, negative, but I know the results were negative on the field for the Ravens on Thursday afternoon. Just a devastating, I called it the worst day of practice in the history of the Baltimore Ravens.
I mean, it would – I've been covering the team now full-time since 2011, and there have been some injuries during practices here and there, and training camp's kind of a different animal. I mean, you know, they're going 2.5, sometimes close to 3 hours, full pads. This was a shells and shorts helmet practice. It wasn't full contact. All indications are that Marcus Peters and Gus Edwards, of course, if you're on the WNST Baltimore Positive text service, you got a word on Thursday afternoon. Non-contact, nothing out of the ordinary as far as anything they did, but the fears, and we know how this works. You know, the confirmation comes with MRIs, but team doctors, team trainers, they can diagnose an ACL injury right away. I mean, it's very rare when they don't know. And usually in cases where they don't know, they're feeling a little more on the optimistic side, and then they find out it's an ACL. When they know or they kind of suspect it's an ACL, it's rarely good news the other way. So it's just absolutely – it's tough to describe. Specifically when you talk about running back with J.K. Dobbins, they lose Justice Hill last week, which I know Justice Hill wasn't going to be a big part of what they did, but he entered the spring and summer as their number 3 running back. So to think about it from where they were in the spring, that they've lost their top 3 running backs on the offseason depth chart in a matter of less than 2 weeks, I mean, that's just absolutely unthinkable. I mean, we'll talk a lot about the running back and Le'Veon Bell and, you know, Trevin Cannon and, you know, whether they bring in someone like Devontae Freeman or Latavius Murray, and they still have Lamar Jackson. I still think they'll be able to run the football. Maybe not in week 1, but I think they'll find their stride in some way running the football. Maybe not with the same ceiling that you had with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, but Lamar Jackson's the foundation of that. But I really look at the Marcus Peters injury, and we all saw when he came in halfway through the 2019 season. You know, the Ravens defenses have been good for as long as the Ravens have existed, save for 96 and 97 maybe. We just know that kind of tradition. But in the post-Ray Lewis, Ed Reed era of Ravens defense, you know, we had kind of seen them not really have those, quote, dogs, right? Those guys that are, you know, they have some bravado, they're brash, you know, they talk trash, you know, Suggs and, you know, a couple here and there, but not really that same culture. Whereas Marcus Peters, I mean, we all remember he was the first one, you know, going to the Titans logo at the 50-yard line in the playoff game. We know what he brings in terms of ball hawk skills. And as I
almost saw him kill Jalen Ramsey on the field at the LA Memorial Coliseum a couple of years. I came 10 feet away. I had a video camera. I'm like, that looked like somebody was good. There was going to be a real fight.
I mean, he has a major chip on his shoulder, but he has been such a big part of their defensive soul over the last couple of years that as deep as they are at corner, and we'll talk about Anthony Averett and Jimmy Smith coming back from injury and Chris Westry, who made the 53-man roster. And, oh, yeah, they still have Marlon Humphrey. So I'm not saying the defense is doomed or anything like that, but, boy, that's a tough one. Marcus Peters is just so good at his craft. And really, I'd have to say even on a personal level, on Thursday morning, he was at the podium. And Marcus Peters isn't a guy who talks to the media a whole lot, but boy, he opened up and talked so much about how he feels he's found a football home in Baltimore, and it's renewed his passion for the game. I mean, he wasn't like choked up, but it was so heartfelt and genuine that you could tell how much he loves playing. I mean, he even said, he's from California. He said Baltimore reminds him a little bit of Oakland, and he meant that in like a positive way, that he really feels at home here. And then hours later, in a routine kind of back pedal drill, a non-contact injury, it's just boy, as I thought right away, can you call something a season from hell before it's even started? And the Ravens they'll dust themselves off. They'll talk about next man up because that's what they do. And look, as long as they have number 8 behind center, you don't write them off. But boy, this run of injuries is it's feeling very 2015 like. And unfortunately, we know that's the only losing season of the John Harbaugh era. Not saying they'll be 5-11 or not talking that much doom and gloom, but it's really tough to find a silver lining in what has transpired here over the last couple of weeks.
Harbaugh got one of those Invictus or, a T-shirt slogan. I mean, this is the time for a T-shirt slogan if they don't have one. I don't know what the hell it is. Luke is here. I'm not even on the plane yet. I headed to Vegas, and the mess has broken out. I haven't even cleared my COVID test yet, but we will be in Vegas on Monday night. Full coverage all over social media. Luke's been in Owings Mills for the last 6 weeks. You're out there getting temperature on all of this. I know they try to keep the temperature up. I would say this, if I'm being the positive guy right now here at Baltimore Positive, I'd look to you and say, you know what? They brought Josh Bynes in a couple years ago and LJ Ford and went 14-2, right? There are running backs out there looking for gigs. I don't know where J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards are on the continuum of people running in this offense. I would think this will be a different kind of replacement than, let's say, replacing Ronnie Stanley or Marshall Yanda or Marcus Peters. I think on the offensive side, they can find running backs to do this job. They're not going to replace Marcus Peters. So you know what I mean? Like there's, I think that's why those positions get paid the way they get paid, right?
There's no question about it. And we've talked about it. You know me, I'm a football nerd. I look at analytics. I check out Football Outsiders and Pro Football Focus and Warren Sharp's football website. And we know how much the Ravens have bought into this defensive philosophy of building their defense from the back moving forward, with their secondary being where they prioritized. Even when you look at Earl Thomas, who didn't work out, but you look at the financial commitment in addition to paying Marlon Humphrey, paying Marcus Peters, acquiring Marcus Peters in the middle of the season. It's just, paying Tavon Young a couple years ago, regardless of how that's worked out. You clearly see where they've committed their dollars financially. And yes, they have Anthony Averett. And I'll even throw this out there, and Wink Martindale will probably reiterate this in the next couple of days when he's talking to the media. He's talked about Anthony Averett, thinking he could be a Pro Bowl caliber corner. Well, he's probably going to be on the field now, and he's going to be playing. But when you're talking about the guy who has led the NFL in interceptions since he's been in the league in 2015, I mean, all of these moves in isolation, and I say it, other than losing Lamar Jackson, that's the one loss that you have where you say, season over. And yeah, you play the games, but you know that it feels very preseason-like, in the way that the second half of 2015 felt that way after Joe Flacco went down.
I told Dennis last week he's being a little too effusive on Tyler Huntley. I don't want to know from that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like Anthony
exactly.
Averett. Yeah. Be effusive all you want. You can love Justice Hill all day long. I just don't need to see him play, right? Like literally.
Yeah, but that's where we get into, you can talk about next man up only so many times until you get to a point where this is not good. And I think what's so concerning, if the football gods came down right now and were talking to us and said, okay, the Ravens' really serious injuries are done now, but they have a 17-game schedule ahead. And you just know with the salary cap and, guys go on IR, they still count against the cap, right? They don't have a whole lot of room. They've restructured a couple deals and to give themselves a little flexibility. That's why I said, someone like Latavius Murray coming in the backfield is completely plausible, if not something you feel they have to do now because, even if Tyson Williams is the toast of the league in fantasy football, he's still just one guy. And Le'Veon Bell hasn't been very successful the last couple years, needless to say. But whether he's playing week one or not, you figure he's going to be playing now at some point here sooner than later. And as I said, they bring in Trenton Cannon, who is more of a Justice Hill type guy. But you look at their current depth chart as Thursday afternoon's news broke. Tyson Williams is your number one running back, a guy who was by most pundits' opinion, a long shot to make the 53-man roster, was on the practice squad last year, and they liked him. They certainly saw some things they liked to keep him around, but he's now your number one back. Trenton Cannon and Le'Veon Bell are your backups, and oh yeah, they just started practicing with the team on Wednesday, and they even Nate McCrary, who was in camp with them, he got claimed by the Denver Broncos off waivers at the end of final cut.
Time to trade a
they don't
7 to bring him back.
Yeah, right. I mean, you said it. I think from a long-term standpoint, as long as Lamar Jackson is there and their offensive line maintains some semblance of health, they'll run the football well. Now, is it going to be the record-setting 2019 rushing attack? That would be ambitious
You know
to
what, dude?
expect
Gus
that.
Edwards wasn't Gus Edwards till he was Gus Edwards. So and I
Yeah,
don't
you
say
never
running
know.
backs are a dime a dozen, but I'm not jumping off a cliff about that. I do think the backside
Peters hurt.
will get leaky.
Yeah.
3 running backs. You can sustain that. If Marlon Humphrey turns an ankle for 3 weeks, you're going to have a hard time winning.
Yeah, I think it's fair to feel that way. And these moves just put you in a position, and this is what I said after J.K. Dobbins went down. The first major injury. L.J. Fort, no disrespect to him, but I think that was more of a depth concern than anything they do in a big picture sense. But with Dobbins, I talked about it. These are losses that hurt you from an upside standpoint, and they hurt you from a margin for error standpoint. You put yourself in a position where it's just so, you can only take so much more. And I mean, now with Marcus Peters, you just said it. If Marlon Humphrey goes down,
to act like there's going to be 17 weeks of nothingness, the attrition has begun, and they're beginning the season bobbing water right now with an offense that they don't even know how to drive right now. And I go back and I said this: Lamar's going to run the ball a lot Monday night, more than we want him to, because they need to win. They need to win, and they need to have mojo to figure out Kansas City, and they're going to be slapping this together the way Harbaugh always says, the hard way. It's never the easy way. It's the Raven way, right? Literally.
And in the big picture, they're going to have to throw the football at some point. It's not going to be week 1 necessarily, because we know the receivers, but if this team, and we've known it all along, but these injuries over the last couple of weeks have just augmented what we already knew, that if this team's going to do something beyond what they've done the last couple of years, it's going to be their passing game taking a significant step forward. And we don't know if that's going to happen at this point. How could you, given what the challenges they had in the summer, or even with those injuries that weren't the season-ending variety?
Viva, viva, viva. We're going to Vegas this weekend. Luke Jones is in Owings Mills, picking up the pieces and the remnants between now and game time. I will be on a jet plane headed for the Diamond in the Desert. We'll be masked up and vaxxed up and cleared down and COVID-free when we head out to Vegas. We'll have full coverage. Going to be a messy weekend. Going to be a messy lead up. Certainly, these injuries have moved the Ravens to sort of above the fold, even with the kickoff on Thursday night. You can find Luke, Baltimore Luke, find all the updates. If you're on the WNST tech service, you do get it first. All brought to you by Coons Ford Security Boulevard. Dennis, of course, getting you ready for the games and all of this mayhem that's broken out here over the weekend. You can find me, Nasty, at WNST.net via email. I, of course, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, all of those places, including the Chaucer on Friday from 2 until 5 in Highlandtown. That's corner of Highland and Foster. It may be a vodka afternoon, Luke. I'm not sure, given all the stakes and all the craziness going on here. But we're going to keep you through it. You can find us anytime, anywhere at BaltimorePositive.com. And, of course, at WNST, AM 1570. We never stop talking Ravens injuries and Baltimore Positive.